violence. Because what we've learned over time is that while we may make laws that improve the status of women on paper, that doesn't always translate into day-to-day life. That women can be in politics, they can have economic opportunities, they can have access to education, and so on and so on. But that statistic doesn't change that 1 in 3 women are victims of violence. And in light of the global pandemic, which we are all affected by, as many of you probably know, a shadow pandemic has also arisen. I just read a report that the UN published that prior to the pandemic, globally 1 in 3 women identified as victims of gender-based violence, and now it's 1 in 2 women globally. So things aren't getting any better, even though the laws are getting better and we see women and we do hear women more and more, but there's something that needs to shift in how we are approaching women and interacting with women. And film, because of its ability to evoke emotion and make us stand and walk in someone else's shoes, I believe, and Women's Voices Now believes very strongly, that this is sort of the missing ingredient in our women's rights work, that we can move from empathy to action on women's rights issues by really putting ourselves in someone else's life through the vehicle of film as a mode of storytelling. So the 2 films that you just watched are very different from each other. A Handful of Ash comes from Iraqi Kurdistan. It's a documentary film. And we have In Search of America, Inshallah, which is a narrative film. So it is based on a true story. It is based on the story of the cousin of the director, in fact. So we can talk about that a little bit if that comes up. But they are equally important in telling us stories of the experiences of women and asking us to listen and to see how we would behave differently if we really could take in the experience. How can we support women? How can we create a world where such suffering doesn't have to take place? Because while women may be the first line of suffering, women's roles in the world as half of the population, it ends up affecting everyone else around us. And I believe personally that if we can uplift women, then all of us will be uplifted. And that's the idea. So to bring these stories live beyond the screen, I am so delighted to be in conversation with these 2 women who I admire tremendously, Shanga Karim and Rupa Jivaji, who dedicate their lives to the issues of women's rights through storytelling. And we're going to learn about their journeys as women's rights activists, as well as where they are personally and professionally today. And of course, answer any questions that we have that come up. And I'm going to be asking questions. It's sort of a conversation. I've known both of these women for a while. I care very deeply about them. So it's sort of like this privilege to have this special time together to delve deeper into the issues that they care about, the work that they've done, and to bring it to all of you in South Africa. So with that said, I'm going to share with you who Rupa is. So Rupa is the person, it says RJ in her name. She has an orange wall in the background and a beautiful Christmas tree. It looks very warm, even though it's dark outside. So Rupa is an actor and writer living in Los Angeles. She was born in India and raised in Mumbai. At a young age, she trained in Bharatanatyam, a classical Indian dance form, and her interest in acting developed right after. As a teenager, she became the face of Brew Coffee, India's largest coffee brand. And after moving to the United States to attend college, she enrolled at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute, where she was awarded a scholarship. She has since appeared in numerous films, such as Taco Shop with Eric Roberts and Tyler Posey, and Planes, to name a few. Her television credits include NBC's Outsourced, CSI Crime Scene Investigation, NCIS, and 911. In 2013, she acted and produced the film In Search of America, Inshallah, which is screened in over 50 film festivals all over the world and received the Best Actress Award at the California Women's Film Festival for it. Rupa's screenplay, In the Face of Courage, was selected among thousands of submissions as a semifinalist in the Writers Lab 2019, a program supported by Meryl Streep and Oprah Winfrey. I'm sorry, Meryl Streep and Nicole Kidman, but Oprah Winfrey plays a part somewhere in here. You'll tell us about that. She's also the recipient of the Founders Award at the Story Summit, founded by David Paul Kirkpatrick. And in addition to serving on the advisory board of Women's Voices Now, Rupa also works with acid attack survivors at Stop Acid Attacks and Shiro's Cafe, which is run by acid attack survivors in India. So Rupa, thank you so much for being with us today. And then let's move over to Shanga Karim. Shanga is the Vancouver local coordinator for the SHOE Project, whose mission is to advance education by providing programs, courses, workshops, and seminars to immigrant and refugee women to develop their written and oral skills, as well as their leadership skills, and to educate the public on the problems faced by immigrant and refugee women in Canada by providing presentations on such topics. She is presently participating in the Global Writing Project book, Geographies of the Heart, sharing stories from newcomers to Canada, which will be published soon in collaboration with the University of Fraser Valley. She's also working on her own nonfiction book in the program sponsored by BC Arts Council under the supervision of her mentor. Shanga has worked as a journalist and women's rights advocate and editor-in-chief for a national newspaper in Kurdistan, northern Iraq, which is where she is from, before leaving her home country. She holds a BA degree in media studies, and she has worked on the issues of honor killing, child marriage, and female genital mutilation, which are still prevalent issues in Kurdistan. Shanga came to Canada in 2015. In order to do so, she had to leave her life and family behind in Kurdistan and embarked upon a new journey without knowing how she would support herself. She's always eager to learn. She is currently a student at a local Canadian university, furthering her education, and she has a passion for creative writing, using her voice and her Canadian experience to help immigrant and refugee women who are newer to the country than she is. And in 2019, the Vancouver Writers Fest recognized her talent and passion, selecting her story for publication. So hopefully Shanga will let us know how we can access some of her writing at some point as well. So starting with Rupa, the film In Search of America, inshallah, really quickly takes us into this very different world, at least from what we live in Los Angeles, but brings it to Los Angeles. And we see this woman who goes along, right, with who she's supposed to be and what she's supposed to do, but she has dreams. And she arrives in Los Angeles, and what was supposed to be isn't what is. And she very quickly has to figure out what to do. And it's really not easy. And knowing you personally, I remember the first time I saw the film, just like your ability to really just transform and make me feel so much for Shaheen, this person who, it's a short film, it's 25 minutes, but I really become involved in her story and so moved by her power and her ability to take control of things when it doesn't seem like she has much resources in order to do so.
Yeah.
So I want to know, what did it feel like to play the role of Shaheen? How did you prepare for that role? And what did it feel like to embody a woman facing the challenges she was facing, even though it isn't necessarily your own reality, so that you could really like make us feel what she was feeling and doing and seeing?
Mm-hmm. I actually started out as an actor primarily. So when I got cast for it, I started to do extensive research and basically on my immediate family, on the community that I grew up with, which had, Indians, Hindus, Muslims, Christians. So, but it's also that it is an issue that we all face, where we come from. So to sort of dwell deeper into the communities that I have seen, and I was able to sort of get examples from my own childhood where I was asked not to do something because I was a woman. So they're all, even though I'm completely different from Shaheen, I was able to sort of tap into and sort of go back to all the experiences that I've had personally, where growing up, there were rules that were different from the rules for growing up as a man, So I think that sort of, and it was very interesting because as I started to look more into Shaheen, I started to think about what liberation is and what is the concept of liberation. And I saw many women in India growing up with hijab. So liberation is a very nuanced topic, and it's a topic that needs to be sort of discussed more, I think, because when we think a woman is in a hijab, I mean, not we, but people automatically sort of assume that she may be forced into something. So those are all the things that I started to sort of look deeper, and I think liberation is something that we need to sort of think what makes us feel liberated wherever we come from, no matter what country, what religion, and so sort of those were all the sort of questions that I had to sort of come up with and feel that who is this woman? Who is this woman? What are the limited choices that she's had, and what does she do at the end of it? And how does she sort of bring her own ideas at the same time respecting the values that she has been given? So I hope I'm sort of making sense of all these thoughts that I'm. Yes. So anyway, so yeah, that's how I started to do my research, and as I started to sort of delve deeper into it, I started to research on the women organizations and the issues that we as women face, and then I sort of came in on board as a producer. So Danish Renzu, the director, said, "You're doing some wonderful work, and I think it would be great to have a woman's perspective and come in on board to sort of take this film through." So, which is what happened. So
I think it's really important that you mention representing a woman wearing hijab, which is the head covering, if anyone is unfamiliar with the term, because again, quite often we make assumptions about who a person is based on their appearances, right? And I think there are stereotypes about the way certain women appear, that's how their mind is as well. And I think Shaheen was such one of those very important, like, representative characters that serves to challenge those stereotypes, that like a woman who's done everything she's supposed to do, but the system didn't deliver to her, right? And that's quite often the problem for women who are seeking their liberation, is quite often they've done everything they're supposed to do, and the other half, the community, the family, doesn't deliver on the safety, the security, the opportunity that is supposed to come with that. So it's paying, so she's tired of the lip service, right? And so she is able to challenge what her trajectory was supposed to be. So I love that her character appears, it's not like she changes, right? She doesn't take off the hijab and become American, right? Like, she maintains herself, who she comes from. She's representative of her community, but she gets in touch with her human dignity. And I think that's a very powerful aspect of the story as well, that you're able to bring that, to bring her through in that way. None of us have, Shanga and I don't think we've had coffee this morning yet. So patience with the words, they don't come so easily. So how have you seen this film affect audiences? And are there any stories that you can share about that?
I think this is one of my favorite projects that I've actually worked on. I've worked on others, but I think I remember I was in Chicago, and a woman walked up to me and she said, "Whatever you did over there, I completely relate to it." And she was Muslim, so it was very interesting to be able to portray this woman and to portray Shaheen, and to sort of have that moved me. I will take that experience. I remember it so vividly, and I will take that experience. And I think this is the reason why we tell stories, apart from all the the screenings and the red carpets and all that. I think it's just those simple moments where we are able to connect. And I think film and storytelling have that power. And I've been changed by many films that I have seen, which they literally change who you are and what you can learn and what you can become. So I think it's a wonderful medium. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share. So.
Thank you. Yes, and I have to add that when we screened the film in Venice, here in Los Angeles, in I think it was 2017, and you were there and speaking with your co-star Nick about the experience of the film. It was actually a very heated night. There was a very heated discussion, and I don't know if you remember, but after, a woman came up to me, and as she was talking, I literally could see sort of her face relax with this understanding that, between the discussion we had that night plus watching the film, she said to me, I didn't know I didn't know that my feelings were shared by other people. I didn't know that we could talk about these things in public. I didn't know that I have I'm putting words in her mouth, but it was basically the power to change my situation, to ask my husband for a different relationship. And, she walked away from that night for the first time realizing that she too has a voice, and it matters. And I don't know what happened afterwards, but I remember just watching her physically change as she was telling me her story and how the film had affected her. That it's a very powerful film. So I just wanted to share my experience of that film in audiences here in Los Angeles, even. And this woman was from South Asia, and still very much connected to her community, and how it sort of gave her the courage to think about her relationship in a way she hadn't thought she could. So you're an advisory board member for Women's Voices Now and an active volunteer and advocate for Stop Acid Attacks. So I'd like you to tell us more about Stop Acid Attacks and the Shiro's Cafe. But before you do that, I just want you to tell us what, for those in the audience who may not be familiar with acid attacks, please tell us what acid attacks are.
So acid attack is a crime that is that happens in many countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, where acid is thrown, and 90% of the time it is on a woman, simply because she refused to reply to your advances, or it can be one of any of those things where women are left with the acid phase, and then it's very traumatic. They have to go through multiple surgeries, and the society, in some societies, they don't recognize this as a crime. So we're constantly fighting for laws, for rehabilitation places which can actually give support to the survivors. So yeah, I think it's an issue that is being talked a little bit more. But I remember there was an acid attack survivor from Africa that I was meeting up with, who's become a good friend of mine, and we actually went to a store here, and somebody asked her very, very politely what happened, and she said, "Well, I'm an acid attack survivor," and the man said, "What is acid attack?" So I was shocked that people don't know about it, which is actually, that if you don't know about it, that means it doesn't happen around you, which is, that's sort of a good thing. But also the fact that it's happening in other places and we don't know anything about it and not much is being done is something needs to be done. So and it's, yeah.
So tell me about, how does Stop Acid Attacks try to do what it says in the title of the organization?
It's actually, Stop Acid Attacks is, I would think, the biggest organization in India, and they provide rehabilitation services for acid attack survivors. And they have cafes, about 4 or 5 cafes all over India, which is run solely by survivors. So it empowers them and it gives them jobs, and they're able to support themselves. So actually, Stop Acid Attacks is they've been fighting with the government for a very, very long time to change laws. And in 2013, the laws were changed where it has become a crime, and the perpetrator, the person who throws the acid, is sent to jail. But it's still an ongoing battle because the support that the survivors receive is not immediate. So it's an ongoing battle. So hopefully sooner than later, we should be able to make sure that these survivors are taken care of and receive all the support that they need. So.
And is it fair to say that Shiro's Cafe plays such an important role in survivors' lives because they're not necessarily welcome in society anymore once they become disfigured and have that experience?
Yes, they have been. I had 2 survivors come in, and there's a wonderful organization called Face Forward, which provides surgeries, free surgeries for people, for survivors, and other people who have faced violence all over the world, and with different treatments. And so when I had met these 2 survivors from India, they were telling me as to how they cannot walk in their street simply because people look, even just by looking at them twice, just glancing more, it sort of puts them in an awkward position. It makes them feel that they are at fault for what happened to them every single day. So it might not even be the big things. It's the little things that we make them feel like they are separate from us, that whatever has happened is somehow their fault. So we have to sort of, correct from the beginning. You know what I mean? Not just the big things, but also from the starting to how we treat them, how we provide employment and how we make them a part of our society, which they already are. So yeah.
Thank you. So you're an actor by trade, right? That is what you do in the day-to-day, seeking those opportunities and bringing stories to people sort of by embodying a different character. It could be a very rigorous and arduous work life. And understandably, when you're not doing that work, it would make sense to just relax, enjoy your life, read lots of books, which I know that you do read lots of books also, which is part of why you're such a knowledgeable person. But what I want to know is what sort of life experiences, personal or professional, have motivated you to not just do your job and then to take the time off, but to volunteer your time and your resources to Women's Voices Now, to stop acid attacks, and to just generally being a woman who can be counted on to raise the voices of other women?
When I first started acting, as a struggling actor, you always want to relate to some role that you see on screen, and I didn't find any role. So pretty much my journey started with wanting to tell stories and write, which is very interesting because I think, once again, stories have such a powerful way. And my work with Stop Acid Attacks, Witch Heroes, came in because I started to write a thriller, which was very bizarre. It went on from the concept of writing a thriller to doing more research, more work on the stories that sort of came in during the part of the research. And when I saw the stories of acid attack survivors, I was like, this is something that needs to be told. So it was something that I really wanted to tell because it hadn't been told. This was about 6-7 years ago. And I think now more stories are coming in out of India and other countries, which is good. These crimes are being taken seriously. So my work with acid attack survivors started with the story, actually, because I wanted to write a script, and it took a different turn. And I started to look at all the wonderful work that Stop Acid Attack does. And I just wanted to be involved. I just didn't want to sit back and yeah.
That makes perfect sense. So it's a perfect segue into my last question for you. And I want to say, I hope that, even after this conversation, that you and Shanga continue to connect, because you are both writers, and there could be some collaboration or even just encouraging each other, because it can be a daunting task and a very self-judging experience to be writing stories that matter, not knowing how they're going to be received in the future. So my last question for you, Rupa, is for now is what are you working on, if you may share with us?
I am writing a comedy. And it is actually about a South Asian woman, surprisingly dealing with the same issues that we talked about, as to what she's supposed to be, what her family expects of her, and where lies in the liberation that she seeks, and while respecting her values of her family, or she needs to be free. We don't know, but yes, that's all I can say for now.
That's fine. Thank you for sharing that much. I can't wait to see it, read it, experience it. Thank you for sharing that. And I like this theme of liberation. I think this is going to tie in throughout the rest of our conversation. So Shanga, tell us a bit more about where you come from. Where you come from, I want to even share about your family, because I know your family story, how many siblings you have. How did you come to be a journalist and an attorney, taking on some of the most taboo subjects that a conservative society such as that of Kurdistan doesn't really want to air into the public necessarily, and that you've played such a role in bringing the important issues to the forefront and asking your community to deal with them, right? So where you come from, and a little bit about your family and your educational and professional journey.
Thank you, Heidi. I'm glad to be here with you all today. Thank you. Yeah, it's not easy actually to be a woman first over there, in different ways, but to be a journalist woman is much harder in that community. Especially, I'm talking about that time that I was a young student at university. I'm talking about in the beginning of 2000s. So it was really hard. But yeah, I came from a big family. I have 10 sisters and I have one brother. So I feel like this way allows me to open more doors, to see more, to learn more, as I am a younger kid in my family. So my older sister like has a huge impact on me. I think especially one of them is a social worker, and she really worked so hard for women's rights, for all of these women, especially in prison, because we have so many issues over there. One of them is when women do something, it's so easy to go to prison and to like to be refused with anything, with their voices or defending themselves, because they don't have like economy, they don't have a power of defending themselves. So that's why it's so hard. So, and my sister working on that field in that time, and I was a kind of child when I saw her this time, and it really affected me, and I grew with that kind of stories and things that are happening in our community. But I never heard about FGM, even this time that my sister was working for women's rights, until I went to university and I started my first year, and I was like, I'm not learning anything here. I want to learn something, and I want to be a journalist. I want to do something that can help, can be a voice. I knew we have so many issues, because even for me, I came from a independent family, and it was kind of open-minded parents, actually, which I'm lucky. Not 100%. We had issues, we had difficulties, but my sister was there always. But I mean, for me, even it was hard, but in that time I had to find some way to raise a voice that we had all of these issues, because we grow with many issues in our country, in our region. So that's how I started to study a journalist, and I started to work in a newspaper, a local newspaper, an independent newspaper. So, and after a while working, I heard about FGM, and I was like eager to learn more about this issue that we have, and I never heard about that in my family. But when I realized that it was a lot of cases around me, and I had to work for that. Yeah, thank you.
So tell us where, so you went to university in the early 2000s. This is when you became aware of FGM. Tell us where you're from specifically and where you were at university, so we can place you in the world.
Sorry. Sure. I am from Kurdistan, northern Iraq, and I was in Slimani University. My city is Slimani. It was 2003 that I started studying at that university, and 1 year after that, I started working on FGM. Yeah.
Thank you. So can you share with us how you became involved with the Handful of Ash film project, and what was happening during the time it was made, and where were you and what were you doing at the time?
Yeah, during that time, I was working with the newspaper and published my stories, my reports about women's rights, women's violence, to raise these voices, to allow other women to talk on themselves, on their issues, and to help each other. So I went to know an organization, Wadi organization. It was a German organization working in our city, and through them, like they made a contact with me to like to make a campaign against that issue that we have and to work on that. So that's how I involved with Wadi organizations. And in that year that they made this film, the filmmaker asked me to be his assistant, as it is very hard for a man to ask our women like about this issue about FGM and all of these deep questions that I'm sure you all heard from the film. So he asked me, but that year it was a busy year for me. I was a student, I was working, I was just got married, and everything was kind of busy, and I couldn't do that big opportunity. But one of my coworkers did that work, which was amazing, and That's how I am. Like in the beginning, I know about how they did it and what they did it, and they went all of the villages and stayed there, and it was not easy. It was so hard because the women sometimes they took us away and say, "Go away, we don't need you. You don't have to be here," because it was so hard to make them to just listen to you um, with something that was practiced for many years, and now you go like a young lady go to a village to talk about FGM and you don't wanna you wanna stop it. It was like, really, that doesn't work here. So that's how it was difficult without any support from government. And I'm sure still now government doesn't support that and say, no, we don't have it. It's not like this number that you are talking about it in the film, in the all of the campaign that we had it in that time. So that's how it's difficult, and that's how I involve it, and because of the organization I was working with too. Yeah.
And this is just to bring in a question that we received from the audience already. Can you tell us a little bit about the filmmaker, the director? Who is he? Where is he from? That's an important part of this story as well. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Nawaz Ahmad is a director, and he is Kurdish. He is from Kurdistan. He's from my city. I just had contact with him yesterday through Facebook. So he's still there. And yeah, he has many other films about mostly about women's rights and women's violence. Yeah, he's a close friend to me. Yeah.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit more about what it was like to bring up such a private issue amongst so many women and families, and what gave everyone the courage to do so. Because what I think is so powerful about Handful of Ash is one, it's it's coming up against just the way things are done, right? Like, and anytime you're asking to change things the way things are done, this is very hard for people. Also, it's not just women who are interviewed in the film. There's also asking the men's experience of how their women are, right? Like how it affects their sex life, how it affects their marriages, how it affects the health of their babies, the mental health of their wives. So I think it was so powerful that it wasn't just asking the women, because it's the point of that,
Right.
Women go through something, but they're not the only ones affected, right? It affects the husbands, the children, the entire community. So tell us a little. You already said that the filmmaker and also the people who are bringing the film to the villages, that there was definitely pushback. What do you want to tell us what to do? Why are you talking about that? Just tell us more about what that experience was like, and how did the shift happen from not wanting to talk about it, asking you to not do what you were doing and your colleagues, to then it being a really important changing experience for the villages ultimately that did watch the film and talked about it.
Yeah, I can start with that we actually, with any activity that we did through the organization that time, we focused on both the gender, female and male, because that was our goal. That was what we really wanted. Because if you just talk to the women, they just became like maybe changed their mind and their like their knowledge about this kind of issue. But what do you do with all of these men? They don't have any information. They even, most of them didn't educated. They didn't go to school. They didn't hear anything about even what women can have. The women didn't know about their rights, about their priorities, about what they can have, what they can do. They always think that they are number two. They have to listen to their husband or any other one that just tell them to do that, which is very sad. It's not like that in our Kurdistan, all of it, but mostly I can say it's like that. And we are working so hard, fighting so hard to tell our women to be a voice for themselves, to educate themselves. And that's what we did. We actually started to bring mullah speech. It was so hard first to find the mullah, the main man in a Muslim religion that is people listening to them. So that's how we started, and not in every villages. We took that village as an example, because that village, the man who kind of organized it or was lead of that village was kind of different for us, and he was really helpful. Unfortunately, he passed away 3 years ago, but he was really helpful with his wife. They were like in an old age, and that's like a treasure for us, because in that age, like not going to school, just thinking in that way, trying to solve this big issue in our community is a huge for us. And that time, that's how we started, and make this village as an example to any other villages, with mullah speech, doctor speech, and social worker. But the most important one is mullah. That's how we could do that. And it's not just go one time and do all of that stuff. It takes years. It takes like, I wake up at 5 a.m. and have to be there at 6 in the village, for example, not through the film, but I mean, that film came from all of this hard work that Wadi did it, the campaign, the visiting, because we had to make a brochure about the about this like issue FGM, and bring to them and read it to them, and have a screen and show them how the bad effect, and there is not any benefit of that, and there is not any true story behind that, that they say if you don't if you don't cut your body, we can eat your food, you are kind of like dirty, you are nothing. So we try to open their mind with this kind of subject that it's not true, and slowly go in and like try to make a connection first with like many support. But in our way that time, I'm sure for Neves, the filmmaker, was same, like many like things comes up, and like to stop you, to harass you, to threat you. But the important thing is how you don't stop, and you try to finish that work, that become a like a big voice for our women. And I just want to add that even this time, like government didn't want to, like, because we worked so hard and we tried to put FGM as a little a small article in the law, family like domestic violence family law that passed in 2011. And I can say we did that. I mean, like the organizations in my city, because it's so difficult. And when the parliament had to raise their hands to voice for that, they didn't. They feel shamed. So our parliament, even women and men, didn't want to raise their hands. So what about the village that never heard anything, and they even didn't have a TV to hear news or something like that? So that was how it's difficult. But the point is how, because it was our people, we knew the culture, the society, the ways to use it for that. I think that's how we could do that. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that it's like the government. So now today, FGM is legally illegal, right? It's on the books as something that is against the law. But that part of the reason it didn't come into the law is because there was a shame around it, like knowing it's going on. So if there's shame around it and you know it's causing harm, why wouldn't you do something about it? And I think that has to do with it affecting women. You know, there's something in there that it's, you know, again, like not seeing women as equal human beings. And this is all over the world, right? That you can carry out a practice against women that is harmful, that you're ashamed that it's happening. You don't want to talk about it, but you still do it because there's this disconnect between women's full humanity. And again, it's not just Kurdistan, it's all over the world. Like there's, it's just in some places it's more pronounced, it's more outside, right? Like the violence against women is more dramatic, if you will. It's not just inside the mind or, you know, behind closed doors. So I just wanted to, I wanted to say that it takes time for societies to like look at themselves in the mirror, right? And this film was really powerful in doing that it sort of made it so that no one could look away anymore. It sort of was one piece of bringing things to a critical mass to affect an important change at the top. But as you said, like the people in the villages didn't even hear these debates, that maybe many people don't even know these laws exist. So you can't just make the law. You have to do the grassroots work where you're meeting with the people to talk about, you know, what things maybe you do want to leave behind from the past as you move forward. What is serving us or not for better, healthier societies? That just came up for me as you were saying everything you were saying. So what I wanted, so my next question to you is, what change on the ground did a handful of ash inspire for the villages to where it was brought?
Yeah, it was a big change compared to the beginning of what is work and what is activities to see why because we didn't know until like it was not like to go search for it. It was just by one case we realized that, oh, that's an issue because we are a big city, and it was not like very something that you hear. And in my family, we never had it. We never even talked about that issue actually. Yeah, but yeah, it was a huge effect to the other villages that we did a handful of ash, because it became a symbol, and we really Wadi really did like a series of activities for this village to show that if you do that, if you do zero of FGM and help us, and we can support you more. For example, we made a school for their children because they didn't have it, or we prepared a school bus to be able to go to another village, and they were so happy about that, like the women, the men, the children. And we brought some playground and some kind of just basic toys for the children, and to show that there is more to do, not just focusing on something that making our women powerless, and making them to not enjoy themselves, to not feel themselves, because it's very sad. I heard many stories, like without the handful of us, that they went to bring the razor for the women to cut them because they didn't know what's that. They told them many like they lie with them. Okay, if you want to have FGM, or like to cut your body, you're gonna get candy, you're gonna get something like that, or you will be grow and you can get married. All of this kind of story that
Mythologies.
washed their minds. Yeah. So that's why it was very important to bring this film to another villages, these villages that they really didn't want us to even enter their land or their places. So and of course for the international organizations, it was a huge impact to that, to be more aware what's happening here, while our government make up everything and they just show the beauty that they want, or they just want to show something else, not the reality of our life or women's life there, because they it's not in their benefit if they show all of that stories that we have.
Right. So in the end, I mean, if I understand correctly, it sounds like between the film and the community interactions and sort of bringing in more infrastructure to the villages, at the end there were some villages that declared zero FGM. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge impact.
Yeah, it was a huge impact, and I still continue that. But as I am in Canada, I'm not like aware about most of their works now. But it makes me happy that they are continuing with that. And for example, when I visited these villages, because after we had the law, we had to take it to the villages to show them, see, it's the law. You don't have a TV, you didn't hear it, but you have, and we had to read for them. And I remember one woman just cried so hard and said, please don't take me to police. I didn't know that. Last week, she did her her oldest daughter, and she had two daughters, and she just hugged them crying in front of me and says, I don't want to do her this one, the Idengar. I am promising. It was a huge impact. It was very sad to see her like that, because the saddest thing for me that these women didn't have a knowledge, didn't have eyes, just their eyes couldn't read it, couldn't understand it. They just in a different world, and that really hurt me. And I had to explain it more to her that that it's something else. I know you didn't like that, so we understood their situation, and we didn't went there to just take them to police, and even government doesn't care a lot still after the law. But we tried so hard to make awareness about the law and tell our people it's a law and you have to be careful with that and stop it. And that was a huge impact too.
Wow. Yes. So you arrived in Canada in 2015. Why did you have to leave home?
Yeah, as I said in the beginning, being a woman is so hard over there in some way. So being a journalist and women and talking about these issues, this kind of subjects, honor killing, FGM, child marriage, and publish it in like I was editor in chief and I had to publish all of that stories or reports and the cases that we had in the court during our work. So that's why I had to leave, and it was not safe anymore. And I felt like uh, if I stayed there, I could do more. But it's like they take your ways and they don't allow you. And I was in a life in like I during November 25th in 2000. I think it was 2012. I was in a live conference a government prepared and I was invited as a my city's organizations to speak there, and they just cut it my speech because it wasn't what the government like, what the government want, or to tell all of these important people that was there how our government is nice and it's good. So because I didn't say that, it was just like a, so how you can work harder or deeply for our people. So I needed more knowledge. I needed to make myself to be aware more about many things that over there it's so hard to get it. And here I can work here to and for my people, hopefully one day. Yeah.
Yeah. So outside of Kurdistan in Canada, it sounds like instead of fighting against censorship, you can almost learn how to fight better because you're allowed to have information, to have your voice, to continue to think about these things and strategize about
Right.
what's the best way to combat the violence against women that is
Totally.
part of
Yeah.
so many women's everyday lives. With that,
Yes.
is that a different way of saying what you just said? Is that right?
It's right. It's
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, it's totally right. Yeah.
All right. So and what's your life like now in Canada? And yes, and again, just like Rupa, when she's not doing her job, she can just walk away from these difficult issues. But you came to a new country, you could also have just walked away from difficult issues, right? You don't have to deal with women's rights issues every day. So what gives you the power, like the work that you do with the Shoe Project every day? You're listening to women's stories of the challenges they've overcome, not only in their home countries but also in Canada as refugees, as immigrants. So why are you doing this?
Yeah, I think when you start in your younger age, so it goes in your blood and it becomes a big part of you, and you can't just like live your life. Even when I was a young student at university, my friends went to like the mountains for a snow day and stuff like that. I had to skip it because there was more to do, and I enjoyed, and I it was something that if I don't do it, who gonna do it? Like it was a big responsibility for me. So I feel same now, and I feel like we have many untold stories in Kurdistan, and someone should tell. And I faced many kind of violence in my region from different people, from the community, the society, even if it's for my friend, it's me too. So because we don't know who gonna face it in reality. So that's why I want to work for that, and I want to be a voice for all these women that live in Kurdistan and they cannot even love their loved ones. Like they cannot choose uh, the like this man that they want to get married with. So like 3 days ago, one police a man being killed from a family's one woman's family as an honor killing because the policemen wanted to rescue the woman, but they killed the policeman. So it happened like 3 days ago. So we have many stories, and I want to tell these stories to bring, especially because we are minority and Kurdish people, so many people doesn't know about us and didn't hear about us. So I want to be a voice for my people, and I really have a goal to focus on our women's voice because their voice is very important for me, and I'm sure it's important for the world to know. And beside that, we have a woman that fight against ISIS in Kobane, and there were Kurdish people, Kurdish women. So why we have these women, it became it was great that in that way Kurdish people being announced more. But I want to tell the stories that it's hidden and still need to be solved and still need to be raised and solved by the women, to be like to be educated by themselves, to be able to work on themselves, on their kids, on their second generation. And here I felt I lost myself for a while as the starting a new life here, and that was another reason for me that made me to feel like to find myself again, to be a voice for refugee and immigrant women in Canada, which is what I am doing now with the Shoe Project. Yeah.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, I'm looking at the time. We have about 7 minutes. There are a few questions from the audience, which if we don't get to them, I will follow up with Shanga and have her answer them in an email, and I will send them to Denise so that they are gotten to her students. So I just want to let you all know that. What I mentioned in the beginning is that with Women's Voices Now, it's not about just giving you heavy topics, challenging issues to deal with and think about. It's all about asking an audience to move from empathy to action, experience watching the film, be moved, get enraged, get sad, get happy, and then do something about it, right? And doing something about it is as simple as have a conversation with someone who isn't in the room with you right now about what you learned with us in the past almost hour. But what I want to ask each of our speakers, so Rupa, we'll start with you. For everyone in the audience, what would be your call to action after watching these films to them? So another way to ask is, how can we invite, I'm sorry, how can we invite, to both of you, how can we invite our audience members to take matters into their own hands and to extend the fight against gender-based violence beyond the experience of this film festival, and to join us in this work 360 days of the year, not just for 16 days of activism against gender violence? So let's start with Rupa, please.
I think it starts with simple actions. So I think when there are so many rules and regulations that are placed on women solely, so if you're able to see it, speak up, I think, and act as a supporter, as a confidant, as a friend to all women around you. And I think it starts with simple things, everyday things that we probably don't even, men or anybody else who is not in the position of a woman is not experiencing it. So I think it starts simple. So just to open your eyes, to be able to have a conversation, listen, and truly hear what we have to say, because I think our stories are important and they are necessary. So I think I would start with that.
So Rupa, thank you. So listening and really hearing to women's stories, to women's voices. This is the absolute first step to creating this change. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, Rupa. Shanga, how about you?
Thank you. I totally agree with Rupa. That's a very good point, and that's how we have to start. And to add it to her speech, I can say just teach your kids, no matter if it's boys and girls, both of them. It's very important to understand equality and to understand their rights, to be able to have a better community and work through that ways for the future, and to hopefully will be done with violence against women. Yeah.
One day, yes. So Shanga, just to reiterate what you've just said is that understanding what equality really means, and what Rupa said about liberation, a woman being liberated can help us reach that equality, I believe, and education, and that and the youth are so important. So those of you who are Denise's students, it's your voices and your experience of these films and what you take out in the world. You're the change, right? You're the future. So we need your voices, especially, and your understanding of equality, of education, of listening and hearing women's voices. So we have only 3 minutes left. So what I want to say is, first of all, thank you, Rupa and Shanga, again, for waking up early with me to talk with each other about these films and about your work. As again, I'm going to reiterate, I'm such a great admirer of both of you, and I'm so blessed to be doing this work with you and to know both of you. And I wish you lots of strength in continuing writing stories, telling stories, sharing those stories, and making change to improve the status of women and girls in your home communities, but also all over the world, because we live in a global world where we can be in South Africa this morning from Los Angeles and from Vancouver. And I would also like to invite all of our audience members to learn more about the work of Women's Voices Now. You can follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We have more films like these that are in our film collection that I invite you to check out and share with friends and family and colleagues. And I'm again very delighted that we were invited to be part of this film festival, and wishing you all a very good weekend, and please stay safe and healthy in this ongoing global pandemic that we're all experiencing. And again, thank you so much for taking the time from your life to be an activist against gender-based violence by coming to this film festival, watching these films, listening to these voices, and please don't let the conversation stop here. Take it out into the world. So with that, I think we'll all say goodbye, and I wish you both a really lovely day. And thank you to Denise for bringing us into this experience. And we can't wait to hear the response, and hope those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube also reach out to us, whether via Women's Voices Now or through the film festival in South Africa. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.